In a small hill town called Meron, there stood an old stone chapel with bells that had not rung for many years. The people said the bells were cursed. Long ago, during a great storm, the bells cracked, and on the same night a young boy named Eli lost his voice. From that day on, the bells were silent, and Eli never spoke again. The townspeople believed sorrow had settled over Meron like a shadow. One morning, Jesus walked into the town with his disciples. He noticed how quiet the streets were, how people spoke in whispers, and how the chapel stood like a wounded memory. Near the chapel steps sat Eli, now a young man, carving small wooden birds. Though his hands worked skillfully, his eyes were heavy with sadness. Jesus sat beside him and watched silently. He picked up one of the birds and smiled. Eli looked up, surprised by the kindness in his eyes. Jesus gently asked, "Do you believe that even broken things can still sing?" Eli could not answer, but something stirred in his heart. He nodded slowly. Soon, many townspeople gathered. They told Jesus about the bells and about Eli's silence. Some asked him to leave, fearing disappointment once again. But Jesus stood and walked toward the chapel. He placed his hand on the old wooden door and closed his eyes in prayer. At that moment, the sky darkened, and a soft wind passed through the town. Jesus turned back to Eli and motioned for him to come closer. He placed his hand gently on Eli's throat and said, "What was taken by fear shall be restored by faith." Eli gasped. For the first time in many years, air moved freely through his chest. His lips trembled, and a single word escaped, "Lord." As that word echoed, a deep sound rolled across the hill. The cracked bells began to ring. Not loudly, but clearly, as if healed from within. The people fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. The bells rang without ropes, without hands, moved only by the power of God. Eli laughed and cried at the same time. His voice grew stronger with each breath. He lifted one of the wooden birds and held it toward Jesus, but Jesus gently closed Eli's fingers around it. "Keep it," he said. "Let it remind you that silence is never the end." The storm clouds passed, and sunlight bathed the chapel. From that day on, the bells rang every morning, not to call people in fear, but in hope. And Eli became known not for the years he was silent, but for the songs he sang, songs of healing, faith, and the miracle that began when Jesus chose to sit beside a quiet man on broken steps. And Meron was silent no more.